Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters. Coming up on today's programme, a football match turns to tragedy in Cairo. After the killing of an unarmed female activist last month, Egyptian police are once again accused of strong-arm tactics and of a fundamental contempt for human life. In Bahrain, the plug is pulled on a new news network just hours after it goes on air, raising questions about freedom of speech in the conservative Gulf nation. And sex for Orthodox Jews. One man's made a film that attempts to tackle some of the trickier questions surrounding the birds and the bees. First, though, the problem of police brutality was once again raised in Egypt this week. Dozens were killed at Cairo's Air Defence Stadium in clashes between supporters of the Zamalek football club and police. It was the second match of the season, the first in which fans were allowed to attend matches once again since similar clashes in Port Said back in 2012. The trouble began just before kickoff, and even as dozens lay dying or wounded, the match continued, as Thomas Waterhouse now reports.
The names of the dead are read out at the door of this morgue in Cairo. Dozens of friends, family and loved ones gathered late on Sunday after tensions ahead of a football match turned into violence. The clashes erupted at the Air Defence Stadium east of Cairo as the clubs Zamalek and ENPPI prepared to play. Unlike most games, this one was open to the public, but the number of tickets was limited to 10,000. The Interior Ministry has said that police were forced to fire tear gas and shotgun pellets after ticketless Zamalek supporters began scaling the stadium walls. The deaths, they say, were caused by a stampede as people started to panic. Supporters, however, claim police fired on the ticket-holding fans as they queued to enter the stadium through a narrow gateway.
This is what we call excessive force. It shouldn't be like this. Anyone who doesn't have a ticket gets killed. Anyone who protests gets killed.
We can't blame the security. The ones to blame are the ones who broke the rules. We have waited for a long time for the authorities to allow fans to attend the matches.
Football fans had been banned from attending most games after the country's worst ever sporting disaster 3 years ago, when clashes between police and supporters left 74 dead in Port Said. Following Sunday's violence, the government has suspended all future Premier League games.
Because of these sad events, it's been decided to postpone the league to a time that will be decided later.
The state prosecutor has also ordered an investigation into the clashes, and an arrest warrant has been issued for the leaders of the Zamalek supporters group, known as the White Knights.
We head now to Baghdad, a city that the Iraqi Prime Minister wants to see return to life as normal, and this despite the ongoing state of war. That was the reason given for the lifting on Saturday of a decade-old curfew. But there's been little sign of normality since it was stopped at midnight on Saturday. By Monday, bomb attacks in Baghdad had killed dozens of people in both a Shiite neighbourhood and in a commercial district of the city. The latest sectarian violence to rock the Iraqi capital as the government continues to struggle, both to the west and the north of the city, with the Islamic State organisation.
The night is still young in Baghdad. Long after midnight, these residents of the Iraqi capital were out on the streets, celebrating the end of a curfew that's been in place on and off for over a decade.
We've been waiting for this decision for years. It was like we were in prison and couldn't stay out late, even if we lived nearby.
We used to be always restricted by the time of day. Once I was kept at a checkpoint until the next morning. I couldn't go through it because the curfew had started.
The curfew was first enforced in 2004, a year after the U.S. invasion. But the restricted hours have done little to stop violence from rocking the capital, with militants often timing their attacks to coincide with rush hour to maximize the number of casualties. That continued on Monday morning as the busy intersection of Aden Square was targeted, leaving a trail of broken glass and blood spatters, killing at least 12 and injuring dozens more.
A suicide bomber, a young boy, set off an explosive-laden vest here in this busy square. It was crowded with rush hour commuters and school pupils.
Aden Square is no stranger to such attacks. It's situated in a predominantly Shiite neighborhood of the capital, home to one of Shia Islam's holiest shrines. Just hours later, a second roadside bomb ripped through a commercial district in the city's northeastern suburb of Husseiniya, killing and injuring still more. And on Saturday, the day the curfew was lifted, 2 suicide attackers killed a total 32 people at a shopping center and at this restaurant in the mainly Shia New Baghdad area. While no group has claimed responsibility for the attacks, Sunni Islamic extremists, including jihadists of the Islamic State group, have used such tactics in the past, often targeting busy squares, markets, and cafes.
Well, the fight against the Islamic State organization continues, of course, across the border in Syria as well. More successfully, it seems, since the start of the new year. The fall of Kobani last month seems to have marked an important turning point in the struggle against the jihadists. Since then, Kurdish fighters claim to have recaptured more than 120 villages across northern Syria. And it seems that women fighters have proved a crucial part in that, proving both fiercely brave on the field and terribly feared in the hearts of the jihadists.
A Kalashnikov and a machine gun coiled in ammunition slung over her shoulder. Frontline fighters, Kurdish all-female resistance battled to defend Kobani. Among the ranks of women at war, Nasreen Abdallah is a soldier and commander.
I'm very proud to have participated in the liberation of Kobani. I'm especially proud as a woman because it's also a woman's fight. It was a very difficult battle.
5 months of intense combat. Kobani, the besieged Syrian city near the frontier with Turkey, was entrenched in a merciless war between the Islamic State organization and Kurdish fighters, taking up arms against the jihadis, female soldiers.
There are students, married women, all kinds of women are engaged in combat.
A 36-year-old journalist, Nasreen Abdallah put her career on hold to take on a cause she believed to be greater. She explains that female soldiers have a psychological edge over jihadists.
They're afraid of us. Jihadists don't like women. They believe that if they're killed by a woman, they will not be rewarded in paradise.
It was a combination of US-led coalition airstrikes and Kurdish troops backed by Syrian rebels fighting on the ground that liberated Kobani. But the Islamic State organization still poses a serious threat elsewhere in Iraq and Syria.
We will fight until the very end.
Nasreen is in Paris for a few days to meet with French authorities before she returns to the battlefield.
Now to a new 24-hour news network that was on air for less than 24 hours. It's based in Bahrain and called the Al Arab News Channel. It had vowed to practice objective journalism in what is a politically charged Middle Eastern region. But shortly after its launch on February 1st, programming was cut after Al Arab aired an interview with a Shiite opponent of the Gulf Kingdom's Sunni rulers. The problem, say the authorities, was permits, the proper ones not having been obtained. Critics, however, say the real problem in the region is once again freedom of speech. To the thorny question of sex now. Never an easy topic to raise, particularly with the young. It is even thornier if you happen to be an Orthodox Jew. Well, one man's been trying to find a way of talking about it without offending, but without ignoring the crucial questions that growing children are likely to ask. A word of warning, though, some of you may find the following content disturbing.
Like many parents, Ori Gruder didn't know how to talk to his pre-adolescent son about sex. As an Orthodox Jew, the task was even harder. So he made an hour-long documentary looking at the questions he thought his son might ask him.
Even me, after 13 years in the Haredic world, I was things I didn't know about this subject. And then when I talked openly about things like that with people and rabbis and therapists, and they told me things that I didn't know. And anyway, the most of it is how to raise my kid, how to educate my kid about this subject.
For Haredi ultra-Orthodox Jews, masturbation is not allowed, and sex is only permitted between a husband and wife for procreation. The Israeli director himself only joined the Haredi community when he was 30. That means he was able to make comparisons between ultra-Orthodox Judaism and secular Israeli society. The film details the trouble the community goes to prevent young people getting aroused and brings to light how little some of them know about sex. This scene shows a young man getting sex education just before his wedding day.
למעשה, כמעט כל התנוחות מותרות. שהדרך הטובה ביותר זה שהבעל יהיה מעל האישה.
The film has already been shown at festivals in the UK, California and Israel. Based on his own experience, the director explores marital love, guilt, frustration and sexual desire in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, all from a man's point of view.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Do take care, and we'll see you again next time.